This is a question for John, our speaker, and for all of us to think about. As we go forward, particularly in the next current term of Obama, and as we face the challenge of ALEC and basically the right wing that's well organized and trying to turn the tide of progressive ideas that come out of the cities, paid sick leave always has polled well in cities. You do polling, and our city was overwhelming. The arguments against it often are that it'll hurt business, but we luckily in Seattle we found that San Francisco had a law in place for a number of years. They did studies and showed that, in fact, San Francisco grew even better than the surrounding neighborhood cities that did not have paid sick leave. So there's real data, and that's how we convinced our city council, 8 out of 9, to support it. So my question or suggestion is, I think that it's the time where we need to, quite honestly, have a national effort pulled together. I'd like to see CAP pulled together. I'd like to see DMO and other organizations around the country really have an opportunity to sit down and think through a strategy. It's great to have efforts from city to city trying to do something, but we really need to pull it over. This is an issue I think we can win on, and I think we can change the national dialogue. That's how important it is. So I'd like to have your ideas, John, on that.
Well, thanks, Nick. First of all, thanks for your leadership. And we've worked together on this for a while. Nick's been to Center for American Progress, the think tank that I founded, and spoke with Dan Malloy, who I think had the same kind of experience in the state of Connecticut. It was good for him politically, it was good for the state substantively, and it's good for Connecticut families. And I think the same thing's true in Seattle. He, I think, already put the idea on the table. There is a coalition that's working together of national organizations that want to improve family life, including the National Partnership for Women and Families, the Center for American Progress, and others. But I think it's important to get organizations like DMO involved, and you know the more party-oriented structures that can push out and convince. I think, you know, we now have this big effort by the Obamanics, OFA, that has chapters all around the country. I think we should, you know, begin to talk about not just what should happen at the federal level, but what needs to happen. How do we put that great organization that President Obama and his team built into service of trying to create progressive change happening at the local and community level. And I think that will actually engage activists across the country, and that we need to kind of spearhead a movement to see where are the most likely opportunities. I mentioned those 4 cities. It looks like in all 4, we're finally going to see passage of paid sick days. In Philadelphia, we had a little bump along the road, but it's now, I think, going to go through. In New York, it's been held up, but we're finally scheduled to vote, and I think the votes are there to pass it. So I think if we plan a movement, we'll see. I was quite involved with the last time we raised the minimum wage, trying to do that at the state level first, through ballot initiative, even in conservative states, through municipal ordinances, and finally it pushed the Congress to enact and raise the minimum wage. The President put that on the agenda in his State of the Union address, and I think without the coordination, without an effort to build from the ground up, you don't see it happening. There's resistance, of course, by the majority in the House. But I think with that sort of concerted effort and building support, showing that it works, showing that it improves people's lives, and I want to reiterate a point I made, showing that you'll produce stronger economies, not weaker economies, that the cities that adopt these kind of family-friendly policies are going to attract the best workers, and you know, businesses will want to go there to innovate, and to invest. And I think if we do that, we'll have success across the country. So I'm happy to try to get together with you afterwards. But again, I think bringing elected officials into this debate in a more coordinated way is really key to getting done what you want to do.
All right, I'm going to play Phil Donahue here. Make sure you identify yourself and the city you're from.
John Olson, City Council, Bridgeport, Connecticut. In the face of Republican intransigence in the House, what do you see? What do you think the strategy should be for the president and the Democratic Party?
And it's, $64,000 question. Look, I think that we saw a sea change happen in December of 2011. It's kind of really coming out of the summer of 2011 when the president tried to negotiate with Boehner and that in advance of the debt limit vote. And I think as a result of that, I think the president pivoted into making an argument about what he saw, that what he wanted to do to build a strong economy. And we went through 2012, the American public overwhelmingly supported that. And one of the things the Republicans like to claim is, well, it was a split decision. You know, we won the House, he won the White House. 1.5 million more voters voted for Democratic House candidates in 2012 than for Republican House candidates. Always remember that statistic. These guys are sitting with a minority vote. They're only in power because they gerrymandered their way in after the 2010 redistricting. And I think we need to remind people of that. I think it's very important because as a democratic principle. But I think right now what the president needs to do is, I think that he's on his charm offensive. I'm a bit skeptical that's going to change the dynamic in the House. I think if he had to cut a deal that was principled and in which he could hold on to his priorities, that eliminated the sequester, that put the country on a long-term path to growth, he could do that even in a bipartisan way in the Senate. I think the problem is the play that he ran sort of in December is unlikely to work again. That is, have the Senate go first and have the Republicans in the House feel like they have to, that the public pressure gets so big that they have to move. I don't see it happening. And so I think in the long run, he has got to do two things, or three things really. One, keep the choice in front of the American people. I think that he went out and tried to make the case to the American people over the last couple of months. He needs to stay at that. He shouldn't, because it wasn't successful in advance of March 1st, he shouldn't give up. He's got to keep the clarity of what the choice is, and these budgets that are being put down today. I mentioned the $770 billion Medicaid cut, but you can go on and on in the Ryan budget. The 2012 election was a referendum on the Ryan budget. And I think he's got to keep that really front and center. Secondly, I think at some level, at some point, he's got to work and to eliminate the sequester, because the devastating cuts over the long term to core government service, I think, are really going to hurt the economy. People think about this in terms of the $85 billion. We got a $15 trillion economy. It's not, at one level, it's not going to have as big of an impact, I think, from a macroeconomic perspective or whatever. But what it's doing is it's really cutting back on core government service, on customs, on airports, on food safety. And that's going to ripple through the whole economy. And that pressure is going to build and be put on, I think, the Republicans to move and to give. It also has, the pressure is going to build to begin to come to grips with what we're doing on the defense side as well. My son serves in the Air Force, and I think you're going to begin to feel that pressure build as the Republican bill that passed last week takes money out of training and moves it into what they call the O&M account, operations and maintenance. So we're asking our young men and women to go risk their lives. We're ensuring that they're going to have bullets, but without being trained to go fight. This is crazy. And I think that we need to keep that in front of people. And I think at some point we need to kind of break their will. I don't know if we'll get a big deal, but I think we get a smaller deal. And I think the third thing the president really needs to do, this is something I particularly annoy him about, is that he's got to use the full force of the presidency. He can't just be the prime minister of this country. I mean, I know that from my days with Clinton. The president has a lot of power. He's got a lot of authority. He's got, under existing law, under the Constitution, under his ability to convene both public and private partners in the cause that he believes in. And he can't get locked and trapped into just being seen as someone who's in an arm wrestling contest with John Boehner and Eric Cantor. He's got to get out in the country. He's got to use that full authority. He's got to use every bit of power that he has in his cabinet agencies to improve the lives of the American people.
Thank you.
All right, we've got we have some young people here, our youth delegates. Let's give them a round of applause. And one of them is going to ask a question, so stand up, introduce yourself, tell us where you're from.
Hello, sorry. My name is Jacob Pavlik, and I'm from Hillsborough, Oregon's Youth Advisory Council. What can youth do in cities today to, I guess, advocate for a more effective government?
Well, I'm probably the wrong guy to ask because I started off when I was at Knox College when I was 18, and I still haven't gotten cynical. I'm still at it. So I must be like a little bit crazy. But look, I think you saw what happened in the last election. Everybody said, oh, people are disappointed. You can't repeat 2008. The Obama magic's gone. Everybody, all the pundits said that. And what happened? Young people turned out in a higher percentage of the population than they did in 2008. They were, and why did that happen? Because of organization. Because of people getting involved, getting into politics, being willing to talk to their neighbors, going, knocking on doors in their dorms, going up and down the streets where they live, convincing sometimes their parents about what the right thing to do was, and getting out and getting themselves organized and then organizing others to make change happen. And you're the backbone of what could be a new progressive generation and a movement. One of the things that I'm proud of I started this think tank about 10 years ago because there were so many right-wing think tanks in Washington. Like most people thought the last thing you needed was another, think tank, even if it was an action-oriented think tank like ours. But everything was going on the right, including on campuses. The right wing was pouring, millions and millions of dollars into creating campus youth organizations and supporting young people more broadly. And one of the things that we've done is created a campus-oriented adjunct to our organization that supports student journalism, that supports activism, that goes beyond the campuses to organize young people in communities across the country. And I think it's one of the best things we've invested in because once you get a taste of the fact that being active can produce change, that becomes a lifelong commitment. So I think that what you need to do is get up, get organized. You're already doing it. That's the reason you're here. So I thank you for that. Get focused on a few things that you can accomplish in your local communities, and go get them done. I think you have the energy and I hope you have the stamina to do it. I'm getting a little too old to be standing up here, so you got to get up here next time.
All right. We've got time for 2 more questions.
Thank you for your talk. My name is Patrick Wine. I'm from the city of College Park, Maryland, just outside of the district. One thing that struck me time and time again with the conversations over the sequester and the impacts it's going to have is that we're hearing about the impacts that it's going to have on the military. We're hearing about the impacts it's going to have with longer lines at the airports and airport control towers not being fully staffed, things like that. What we're not hearing as much about is the real human impact it's going to have on low-income communities on the people with disabilities, veterans with disabilities, and elderly people that are going to end up homeless when we see the cuts to housing programs, the longer times that people are going to have to wait to get Social Security benefits when they cut administrative expenses, the Social Security Administration, the people that are going to go without food stamps. What can we do to get these stories out there and let people know that the real impact that this is going to have in their communities? Thank you.
Look, I think that is, I think, the responsibility of all of us in the room to lift up the voices and the lives of people around the country who are really at the front edge of this. Whether that's people who can't get housing, or there's a big cut in HIV screening. It goes down the list. And I think making that real means getting those voices out there in the communities and really on television, I think. I would reference a website called Half in 10, which is collecting stories from around the country that we're involved with, that is trying to, the purpose of that project is to try to cut the poverty rate in half in 10 years. But obviously, we keep getting set back by the kinds of things that are going on today. I sometimes say that that was a lofty goal to cut the poverty rate in half in 10 years, but George Bush helped us out a little bit by pushing it up so high that getting it back down by half is going to be more of a doable achievement. But really, I think people are really struggling, and these cuts mean a lot. Whether that's people having to leave school, or people, as I said, not being able to get housing, or one of the things in the construction of it, and maybe it's the reason the White House hasn't argued this as much this way, was they did preserve certain programs, SNAP, food stamps, Medicaid, etc. They're held harmless from the sequester. So that may have they've tried to argue, I guess, that they tried to protect the most vulnerable people, and maybe that's kind of caused some dissonance. But I think you're right. I think we really got to go find the people whose lives are being affected and make them the spokespeople for why these policies are ridiculous.
All right, our final question.
Hello, I'm Tony Eisman from Laguna Beach, California. It's a town of do-gooders, and I say that because we've had a tradition of helping our homeless, and because of that we have now a large population, not of economically homeless, but chronically homeless people. And it seems that because we as a community do this, the other communities don't have to. I'm surrounded by Republican communities. We need some kind of help. Not my community, but I think the nation as a whole, particularly when we see these veterans who are going to be returning. And as a result of the PTSD, I think we're going to see a lot of people on the street. And I guess I need some ideas on how to go forward.
Well, that's, I was just down with one of my former Clinton colleagues, who's the mayor now of Jacksonville, Florida, Alvin Brown. And one of the things he did when he got into office was, particularly on this question of veterans and the needs of people returning from services, he created a cabinet position in his office, staffed it with a former admiral, now it's a military community in Jacksonville, to some extent because of the basis. But they've had tremendous effect of not just organizing the city, but organizing the business community to try to really tackle this problem, to provide both support and, most importantly, to provide jobs with backup social services so that people can get back into the workforce. So that's one example of a place that I think has had real tremendous impact just in a fairly short time by concentrating on the problem, thinking about what the solutions are, involving the business community in trying to both support the city government. And they do it, they've done it with without raising taxes, without affecting other kind of city services, but just by being smart, focusing on the problem, getting the right kind of personnel. So maybe I can put you in touch with the mayor, and he might have some ideas.